just looking now at drawing y equals 1 over f of x, this is called the reciprocal function. Okay, so the reciprocal function means all of the y values, you need to flip the original function and make it like a fraction. So let's just look at this one here. All right, this is, let's say that is 4 minus 3. Okay, so first step. If I want to do y equals 1 over f of x, that means wherever the f of x value equals 0, it is undefined. So what I'd like you to do is where that's happening, which is there and there, that becomes 1, like that's like 1 over 0 when you flip it. So it'll be y equals 1 over 0. So they actually end up being asymptotes, because at the asymptote is where they're undefined. So step 1 when you're doing the reciprocal graph, step 1 is to get the x-intercepts. Step 1 is to get the x-intercepts, which is where y equals 0, and you flip them, so you get 1 over 0, and this will become an asymptote. So it is asymptote at the x-intercepts. Then what will happen is, I'm just going to give you a y value here. Let's just say that's 4. Everything else gets flipped. So the y-intercept will be flipped. So instead of being at 4, it's going to be 1 over 4. So you flip it. So like that's y equals 4. So that means 1 on f of x will be 1 on 4. So that will now go through a quarter. And if you have on this graph exactly where y equals 1, I'm just going to make this a little bit neater. I probably should have got that axis. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry, no, that didn't work. Let's go like that. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So 4 will go to a quarter. So it's right down there. That's a quarter. Where y equals 1, anything below that, if you're flipping anything below y equals 1, so for example, so everything, when you got y equals 1, if you flip y equals 1, 1 on 1 is just 1. So at the point where y equals 1, it actually just stays the same. Okay, so we know it goes through a quarter, we know it goes through those points. And if you look at the curve here, like if you flip 4, you go down here. If you flip 3, you go down to a third, so it'll be down there. If you flipped 3, it will go down to a third. If you flip 2, it'll go down to a half. So it's basically, it's coming down here like this. And then when you flip the bigger numbers, they go, like if you flip 4, it goes to a quarter. If you flip 3, it will go to a third. If you flip 2, it goes to a half. When you actually flip the fractions in this, so when you flip the fractions, when you flip the big numbers, you see that they flip and they come down and they become smaller numbers. So, like if this was y equals 2, when you flip 2, it'll go to a half, and that's what that is there, a half, so it comes down. But when you're flipping these big numbers here, all of them, down here, when you're flipping the fractions, so let's say here, say you flip a third will go to 3. So they actually get bigger. So we know that there is an asymptote here at the intercepts. And what happens is this curve just keeps getting bigger and it approaches the asymptotes. But what happens to this curve down the bottom here, like this one here? So the curve down the bottom there will also flip. So at -1, it'll just stay the same. So you say that was at y equals -1, it stays the same. But the little fraction ones will just get bigger because that's like -1/2. -1/2 will go down to -2. So it comes down here. So -1/2 will flip to -2. As you go -1/2, that'll go to -2. If you get -1/4, it goes to -4. So see, it gets bigger. But the big ones, like say you've got this one here, say that's at -3. See, -3 will go to -1/3. The big ones get smaller. So the big goes small, even for negatives and positives, and the small ones will get big. So the whole thing will just flip. And here it goes through -1, but it just flips and it becomes an asymptote. So your final graph then, you can kind of see it there. It becomes an asymptote at the intercepts, like that. The intercept goes from 4 to a quarter, and that's where it intersects at a quarter. That flips over, this one flips over, and this one flips over. And that's an asymptote, so I'll just dot that. That's what your final curve will look like. So let's just look at this one here. Okay, the asymptotes, if I wanted to draw y equals 1 on f of x, the asymptotes here are at the x-intercepts. I'm just going to give you some values here. This is going to be 2, and I'll put 1 there. This is going to be -1 and -2, just there. So then everything just flips. So the 2 goes to a half, okay? And it just approaches the asymptotes. The actual point where it's intersecting there will be at y equals 1. And here, the 2 goes to -1/2, so it flips, and the whole thing flips and inverts, and it will go to that curve there and approach the asymptotes. So that point there will be minus the y value will be -1/2. That's what happens. And this one, the y value there will go from 2. The y value will be at 1/2. These ones here will just flip and see intersecting, that's at -1. And the same in flip, but that point there, that will match up with 1. Because when you flip the 1, 1 becomes 1 on 1. Resulting curve.